because Randy Brown just hit the floor like a Star Wars AT-AT being taken down.
Welcome into Tapping Vegas, everybody. Our units are so juiced up right now. Our bank accounts are getting tested. We're pissing hot over here. Happy Red Panty Night for Tapping Vegas.
Break out the red panties. We're rich, baby.
Guys, we're going to make some more money again. Bobby, 40 units on the year so far, and 4 units just last week. So how are you feeling, man?
Feeling good. Last card a few weeks ago, so it's been a while. It was on January 20th. Shout out to Sean Woodson for moving our units up with that unanimous decision victory over Charles Jourdain. The other fights were a little dicey, but you know what? You can't always win them all, but we still do better than your other average MMA content creators who are still ahead of the pack, still posting our records. Those other guys and girls don't. So keep following along and you'll keep getting those red panty nights.
Absolutely, man. We got 5 fights for you that we're really excited to talk about. Our first one is a women's fight. We got Meatball Molly McCann versus Diana Belbita, the Warrior Princess. Don't worry, these names do get better the further down we go. This, Bobby, we're starting off with my Nuck If You Buck fight of the night.
Ooh, this is the Nuck of the Buck. That's interesting.
Or I have a reason for this too. Molly is coming off of back-to-back losses right now. She's already beat Belbita before. She's an upper body fighter. She's not going to kick you. She's not going to do any of that type of stuff. She's going to take abuse. She's a warrior, but she's got some KO power too. Belbita, she can use all 3 phases of the game. She can use striking, kicking. She can even do submissions and some grappling. Is she going to be able to against Molly? I don't think so. She's got fast punches, but they are weak elbow punches, boy. I was watching her tape. She gets on top and starts punching like this. No wind up or nothing. Just from the elbow. It looked like what a child would do. She's good at passing guard, but like that's the only thing I could get good from her. She's not great at anything. I really don't think she's that good of a fighter. Who's she beating? Nobody. I think Molly wins this one. Nuck if you buck. It might be a quick night. I can see Molly getting the KO. What do you think about this one?
I'm off meds on this fight. I've waffled. I've schizoed on it so many times, violently just back and forth, because as we were talking about before we started recording, you just never know what's going to happen in women's MMA. You just never know. You think you got it figured out. You think you know who's going to win, and then some craziness happens. And Molly McCann is kind of like a perfect example of that, because back in my article writing days, the last time I talked about Molly McCann was when she fought Julia Storyarenko. And in that article, I'll own up to my L on that and say I was heavily encouraging you to put your money on Meatball Molly because she was fighting in London. Her and Patty were on the same card, I believe. You know, Molly's British, Patty's British. They always try to give the British fighters when they go to the UK on these London cards, give them easy gimme fights to, get the home crowd all riled up and excited. So I was, thinking she was a lock against Storyarenko, and she got viciously armbarred in the first round. So that leads us to something very, very interesting. As Ben just said, Belbita is a grappler who is going to look to press that advantage in this fight. I'm kind of, once again, waffling on this because while I do think ordinarily McCann does have the grappling advantage, I just watched her last July get armbarred by what was supposed to be the inferior grappler in the first round. And I also watched Meatball Molly do like a day one white belt mistake where instead of trying to escape from the armbar attempt, she rolled into the armbar attempt and made it worse and applied more pressure to her own arm instead of trying to escape the situation. And so that kind of left me scratching my head a little bit confused. But once I look at the odds that I have on DraftKings, Molly McCann by a sub is a plus 700. For her to win by KO, TKO, DQ is a plus 400. The only thing that you're losing money on is a minus 105 if you pick Meatball Molly by decision. If you just take the money line, you're not going to be very profitable because she's a minus 258 and Belbita is a plus 10. If you do Belbita by KO TKO, you get plus 1200. If you do sub, you get 1400. I do agree. I think this is probably going to be a finish. Somebody's going to get finished. It's just I waffle back and forth, but I guess I'll go Meatball Molly by the plus 400 KO TKO. It really is difficult. I really feel like I had it figured out, but women's MMA is unpredictable, and you're always surprised by honestly how bad it is and how it still unfortunately has many years to catch up to men's divisions, except for strawweight. Strawweight's pretty decent. Every other division's barren and dead, and you know that as fans. But I mean, if you're going to give me a plus 400 on Molly McCann and I have to watch the equivalent of like a turd sandwich versus a giant douche battle it out in the octagon, I guess, plus 400 is pretty good odds. Meatball Molly does have some pretty nice, impressive, first round or second round spinning elbow finishes on other cans. Belbita's looking like a can.
Yes.
The UFC definitely has an investment in Meatball Molly and trying to get her to stick around in the UFC, if nothing else, to put her corpse on those London cards. And, the Paddy Pimblett relationship that she's fought to cultivate, that her career is hanging on by a thread from his coattails. So based on all these factors, sure. Meatball Molly plus 400, I think that's a really great value for a fight that should be very whelming.
Absolutely agree, man. I think that we're seeing eye to eye on that one. You're making me nervous. I thought you were going to take Belbita. I'm glad you didn't. But getting into this next fight, it's real Slav hours.
Real Slav skills on the ground squad.
Real Slav hours indeed. So yeah, we got Makhmud Muradov, and he is going to be facing Aliaskhab Khizriev. This one was hard because I couldn't find much information on Aliaskhab Khizriev. Makhmud Muradov is a guy he's an Uzbeki. Khizriev's Russian. I like how Makhmud Muradov was able to beat Brian Barberena last July. Yeah, it was a unanimous decision. But Brian Barberena, even though he's a little bit past his prime, he's always a good litmus test in the division to see if you can beat him. He's a good gatekeeper to kind of see where your potential is, a good gauge for you. So it was good that he was able to beat him. But he's had, some issues before that fight. Before the Barberena fight, he had fights canceled, 3 fights canceled, lost a unanimous decision. Gerald Mearshart choked him out in round 2. The guy's not bad, but he hasn't exactly been, a world beater. He's been around since 2019, but only has, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This would be his 7th fight overall in the UFC. So kind of inactive. Once again, a lot of canceled fights have led to that. So not necessarily his fault, but still tough fight because, he goes to decision a lot. Had a lot of finishes in his, amateur, regional circuit tenure. But one of those guys, as we have mentioned before, hasn't necessarily translated to the UFC. It's kind of hit or miss. He's not as strong of a finisher in the UFC as he was on the regional scene. But he does have a nice overhand right win over Trevor Smith from 2019 and a really good flying knee and punches finish over Andrew Sanchez, who Andrew Sanchez is a guy I was pretty high on since his time on The Ultimate Fighter with Khalil Roundtree and Phil Halls and those individuals. So that was pretty impressive, but this is a tough fight because of the lack of information, kind of the lack of tape out there on Khizriev or whatever the hell his name is. Yeah, Khizriev. God, these Russian guys and their ridiculous names. But I kind of like the edge that Muradov has in terms of the UFC experience, a lot of the overall fight experience that he has. I do believe he has just more fights in general. Yeah, 26-8 record for Makhmud Muradov to 14-0 for Khizriev. So it's great that he's undefeated. Obviously, he's riding that high of being a young, undefeated guy. But maybe this would be a situation where that vet edge and that vet experience kind of wins out and that UFC edge, because at plus 124 for Makhmud to a minus 148 for Khizriev, that's pretty interesting. If you want to go Makhmud by KO TKO, you're looking at a plus 350. By sub, you're looking at a plus 1600. By decision, you're looking at plus 350. Khizriev is a plus 400 for KO TKO, plus 300 for sub, plus 275 for decision. Just based off the lack of information, this is what's leaning me to pick Makhmud in this fight until I kind of start to see more from Khizriev and kind of familiarize myself with his game, I guess you could say. I like Makhmud, especially even if you just want to play it safe and take the money line at that plus 124. But I really like how you get a good payout for a decision at plus 350. So I think that's where my money would go, is on decision by plus 350 for Makhmud. Because, yes, he has some finishes, but they're not really, I guess, consistent. So since he's kind of spotty, I like to just kind of play it safe on this particular fight when I'm not really too familiar with all the ins and outs of things that are going on, which is a rarity for me to play it safe. But plus 350 decision, Makhmud Muradov, that's where I'm going. What about you, Ben?
Bobby, you were about to learn about Khizriev on Saturday, my friend. The man is delivered. So he has, looking at Khizriev, takedown is what he wants to do. He just wants to take you down and then ground and pound you to TKO. He's not even trying to knock you out on your feet. He just wants to take you down and bash your head in. He's got great, safe wrestler. He takes shots when he's close. He doesn't dive for anything. I love that to see out of guys. Ben Askren, I mean, rest in peace after him diving in. The only thing is that he can get sloppy when he gets on top. If he gets you down with that takedown, or he's just passing you by and you go down, he's going to try to just jump on top of you and start hammering away, and not kind of the intricacies of body control and making sure he's got his weight on you first. He just kind of goes after your head, try to get you out right then. Muradov, interesting, his backstory. I guess his dad got injured when he was really young, like 15, so he had to start working, and through his MMA career, he ended up being security, so he would get shot and stabbed multiple times throughout his time as a security guard. Also, to make money, dude did softcore.
I did hear that. I did hear that he was a softcore performer.
I mean, way to go for you, guy. If you're taking that. Dude's all over the place, though. Like, when I'm watching him fight, he does the same thing as Khizriev does, where he just goes after the kill, but his isn't just when you're down. I think he'll go after you, and he'll start swinging away, and if you aren't dazed, you can catch him, and that really worries me. He can't pass guard either. I was watching just fight after fight after fight. If anybody's on their ground, they just got their legs up and they're just kicking him away, and he keeps trying to get past. He's just trying to like punch you in the face while he's standing at such a distance. He's just trying to dive in at your face and then just stands back up. That really worries me. He's strong, very powerful, fast punches, but I have Khizriev winning this, and I think he gets the TKO. Khizriev, I mean, dude, what I saw from him, I was impressed.
Yeah, interesting. I was not able to find too much. That's on me, though. I'll own up to that. But all those things considered, let me pull the odds back up again then, since you said KO TKO instead of a sub, since he does primarily look for the sub, and he has 2 sub finishes from Contender Series, right? Was it 2 subs or 1 sub finish from Contender Series?
I can look it up real quick. He has Khizriev.
Yeah.
He has
Khizriev, yeah.
2. He got a rear naked choke, or they're both rear naked chokes, actually.
Oh, so yeah. So what do you think then with Khizriev at plus 400 by KO TKO or plus 300 for sub? Which one would you go?
See, he could absolutely get the sub, but I think Muradov is just, I think he's going to be too good, and I don't think that Khizriev will get in position for the sub. I think it's one of those guys he's going to want to finish him early. Because you're looking at him, Khizriev, if you just look at pictures side by side, you would think that Muradov would kill him. Because this dude he's a little flabby. He's the Russian version of me. The dude, I don't think he wants it to go the distance. His fights ended in the first and in the second, 2 minutes into the second. So I think he's just going to want to end it. I don't think he can get in position for the sub. So I think he's just going to try to bash his head in.
All right, cool. Good analysis. Yeah, just wanted to pick your brain on that one since there's actually surprisingly pretty good odds on both of those, which one you'd lean to if you were kind of, on the hot seat, about to place a bet, waffling back and forth.
Yeah.
Where you'd go with that.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. Getting into another one, we've got Randy Brown versus Muslim Salikhov. Russian heavy card, by the way, today, guys.
Yes, very much.
Randy Brown, he's a sub seeker, stands tall, and eats it with his chin. He's not one of the guys that kind of stays down like this. Stands up straight with his chin out. Open to calf kicks. We saw that. I forget who I was watching. One of his fights. I think it's Arnold Allen, maybe?
Let me see if he's fought Allen, because I was thinking Jack Della Maddalena.
It was one of the guys that we've done before. I can't remember who it was, but I mean, he was just destroyed him with calf kicks, and like to the point that he was having a hard time standing at the end. He's not good or smart on his back either. Just like you were talking about McCann, rolling the wrong way, and that is absolutely something that if you do it, it can end the fight. You can roll the wrong way, and then once they get that latched up, it's over. Got great head movement, so he's going to be hard to strike. He baits opponents, so he's going to pretend like he's phased, or he's going to pretend like he's gassed. And then when you go up for the kill, that's when he gets you. He gets gassed, though. He does get gassed
right
at the very end of the fight that I was watching. I mean, the dude wasn't doing anything anymore. Poor defense too. I don't think the guy strike defense. I don't think is very good. And then looking at Salikhov, a dude has lightning fast kicks. Like his 360 kicks are unreal. Dude's smooth as butter. He makes opponents look like what I felt like they're in slow motion. The way he just catches their legs when they go for kicks, or just his transitions and defense is just so good and so fast. Either he's predicting it, he's one step ahead of them, or he's just really that fast at processing. Great body control. Also, if he gets you down, he's going to actually stay on top of you and make you work for it. Salikhov, pretty big underdog. Pretty big age difference. He's almost 40 where Randy Brown's 33. 8-inch reach advantage for Brown too. Brown's the heavy favorite. Everything's pointing to Brown, but just what I saw, I'm going with Salikhov. I'm going Salikhov either through the decision or the KO.
I agree on this one 100%. And it's another one of those things. I'm going to keep coming back to it, not to sound like a broken record, but you feel led into a trap because you think you know what's going to happen.
Right.
And sometimes it doesn't always work out that way type thing. But I like to affectionately call this fight the battle of unmet expectation, because here you have both guys who I vividly remember throughout my time of being a fan of the sport and following the UFC. Randy Brown, Muslim Salikhov, both in their own right, independently, at various times have been hailed as like just what this division needs, like the next big thing in the division. And you know, as well as I do, and the other fans out there know, for just as many of those guys out there that are the next big thing, the next Conor, Khabib, whatever, DC, John Jones, there's just as many guys who unfortunately just don't meet that potential. And unfortunately, that's kind of the case with both Randy Brown and Muslim Salikhov. Neither one has really lived up to the hype that people have at various times generated for them. Randy Brown in particular sticks out in my memory because of the guy I got a man crush on, Jack Della Maddalena, like viciously, basically like finished the dude twice in one fight, like viciously laid him out with a right hand, like a straight right, I believe it was, that had him collapse, like comically. Like only James Vick collapses when he's knocked out more comically than Randy Brown in MMA, because Randy Brown just hit the floor like a Star Wars AT-AT being taken down by like a Rebel snow speeder. And then you're like, oh, the fight should probably be called, but the ref's reading his grocery list. And so Jack, just like spider monkeys, takes the back, chokes him out. He's like, all right, you're not going to call the fight because the dude's knocked out. I'll choke him out too to boot. All in round one. All in round one. Vicious loss. His last fight, he did win last June 2023 against Wellington Turman by unanimous decision. But that's not doing much for me. I'm not a believer in Wellington Turman. He's not a good fighter. I mean, you look at his record, he hasn't really beaten anybody, and I'm not trying to get too much into MMA math, but he just doesn't stand out to me to justify all the hype he's received. You know, Francisco Trinaldo, Chaos Williams, Jared Gooden, Cowboy Alex Oliveira, Worley Alvarez, Brian Barberina, but the guy has just also had vicious loss. Like Nico Price was the first guy to kind of turn him into a meme where that was like one of the rare, okay, Randy Brown has top position, dominant grappling, you know, had Price in a very compromising position up against the fence, and Price knocks him out from bottom. Like, I think that was one of only 3 KO from bottom finishes in UFC history, let alone, you know, like the whole sport as a MMA in general. It's just something you don't see very often. He fell victim to it and stuff like that. It's just very concerning to me. And yeah, you're spot on about Muslim Salikhov. They don't call him the king of kung fu for no reason. That's literally his nickname.
Yeah.
But once again, unmet expectation. Why are you losing to strikes against Li Jingling? Li Jingling's a great gatekeeper, but he's not the upper echelons of the welterweight division. Why are you losing a unanimous decision to Nicholas Dalby? You know, no hate towards these people, but they're not that top tier talent that you're billed to be. He's also beaten Francisco Trinaldo. That doesn't do it for me. Ricky Rainey doesn't do it for me. You know, the guy has been in the UFC for a long time, but I mean, he's been in since 2017, but has had so many fights canceled that he's only actually fought in the UFC 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9 times. This would be his 10th fight since 2017. It's just not there. So it's tough, but owing to the fact I see time and time again from Nico Price, Jack Della Maddalena, et cetera, Randy Brown just get caught and finished in such outlandish Johnny Walker style ways, I'm really enjoying and agreeing with Salikhov at the money line of a plus 225. Randy Brown should not be as heavy of a favorite. I don't know if I'm going to call this my LL Cool J licking the lips pick, but it might end up being that way because I don't see how odds makers have this so drastically far apart. Minus 278 for Randy Brown is a bit ridiculous to me. This should be a way closer fight, just simply based off, unfortunately, how mediocre these two guys have been. It's not like one just drastically stands out over the other to this extreme of a position to have one as such a heavy favorite. And KO, TKO, DQ for Muslims plus 450, sub plus 2,000, decision plus 550. Once again, Randy Brown's prone to being finished in wild ways. I'm going to be in agreement with you. I like Muslim Salikhov by KO, TKO at a pretty juicy plus 450. We'll see if that ends up being the Haymaker. It's looking tantalizing right now.
Mm-hmm.
And if you just want to be safe at the money line plus 225, once again, odds makers, I'm a little confused on how so far apart it is. It's just not really computing with me right now based off everything I've seen from these two guys, their records, etc.
That's exactly what I think, Bobby. Like, you're looking at, when I watch the fight, I'm like, Salikhov just looks better. But if you just look at stats and you're like, wow, Randy Brown's so much younger. He's 4-1, whereas Muslim's 3-2. He's got that 8-inch reach. And then Muslim, his fighting style is Sanda, which isn't even Sambo. I didn't even know about. Sanda's like the Chinese version of Sambo. Everybody knows BJJ. Yeah. Everybody knows Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Randy Brown just, and then you see those odds, you're like, okay, that's easy. Like, I should just go Randy Brown. Whereas a lot of the times you'll see like a minus 600 favorite and stuff. They're like, oh wow, they feel like they're getting a value. Where I agree with you 100%. I feel like Salikhov's the pick.
Yeah, this isn't like one of those Bo Nickel fights where you're like, all right, I get it. I see why Bo Nickel's minus 600 because he's fighting the guy who's literally an arborist, who just last week was cutting down the M tree that had ash borers in your yard or something. And, now they pulled him out of like, Tom's Diner MMA to fight Bo Nickel to pump up his numbers. This isn't
Right.
one of those situations. This is one of those where, experienced guys like Ben and I are kind of looking at it. And once again, I don't know if it's my LL Cool J pick, but we're definitely looking at it, giving it that little side eye, like, hey, come here, girl. Like, this is a little tantalizing what's going on here.
I agree, man. I agree. I'm also really interested in what you think about this next fight. So why don't you break it down?
Ooh, this is a good one. This is probably my favorite fight on the whole card. The main event's good, but this one's really grown on me also in its own right. And it's Renato Moicano versus Drew Dober. And this is the theme of the card, man. Like, I'm waffling. It's very difficult to predict these. It's difficult to kind of choose somebody and commit to them because we don't do like your other patty cake MMA channels. We give you a pick, we give you odds, we stand by it, win, lose, or draw. We don't back down, we don't make excuses. So everything we give you, we stand by 100%. We put our own money on, etc. And this one's tough for me because I've went back and forth so much because Renato Moicano does seem on paper like what you would think the better fighter is. Like his record's better. He seems more polished in his striking. Seems like he has the grappling advantage, things of that nature. Drew Dober, I talk about these individuals in MMA all the time. We know what they're like. We've seen it. They've been around for a while. Can you teach an old dog new tricks type thing? That's kind of what Drew Dober is. He's another one of those guys where he has surprised me, though. Most of these guys and girls in MMA that I tell you, can you teach an old dog new tricks? Are they going to show a new facet to the game? They haven't been able to, and there's a reason for it. Drew Dober, I'll give some credit to. He has, like, I didn't expect him, for example, to beat Terrence McKinney. When he beat Terrence McKinney, that showcased a lot of grit, a lot of determination. It was a comeback win. McKinney was on his way to finishing him, and then Drew Dober was able to turn around and get his own finish, and that's kind of started to skid for McKinney. So that was pretty impressive that Drew Dober was able to do that, and he was able to kind of put a damper on the fire of Bobby Green that he had going there for a little while by KO and Bobby Green. But what concerns me is the story of Drew Dober, which is he does things like that. He'll break Bobby Green's hot streak. He'll, break Terrence McKinney when he should have been broken himself. He'll beat Alex Hernandez by punches. He'll KO Nasrat Hakparast, who was a guy I was really high on in that division, who I thought might be the next big thing. But then he'll lose to Matt Frivola. No offense to Matt Frivola, but it's Matt Frivola. Like, you don't lose to Matt Frivola, especially getting finished in the first round by a TKO. And I know it probably wasn't an early stoppage because it was Herb Dean officiating, and Herb Dean will let you die before he stops the fight. The man's thinking about what, poontang he's going to come home to that night. He ain't worried about the fight anymore. He's got his check. He's done. So that's what concerns me about Drew Dober is for all these glimpses we see from him and his long career, because the man's 27-12. He's been in MMA for a long time. A lot of miles come with that. He's even been in the UFC for a long time. He's been in the UFC since 2013. And I like to think that that wasn't that far away anymore, but it's been a little bit of time, especially to be in MMA. And that's not his professional career as a whole. That's just UFC time alone that he's been in the game with all these fights, all this damage, all these miles. And while we talk about, hey, it gives you an advantage as the vet edge, the experience edge, the ring time, et cetera, that does all help. I like that Moicano has like the fresh legs. He's 17-5, won no contest. I believe he's the younger guy. Drew Dober doesn't seem like he's that. Oh, it's only by a year. Yeah, it's not drastic, but he doesn't have the miles. He hasn't been in as many wars. Like the biggest war he's had that I can think of off the top of my head, which is what makes me concerned about him, was he did have a war with RDA. I am concerned that in 2022, it was a great fight. It was an amazing fight I watched live, and it was exciting. But for RDA in 2022 to take you to that much of a dogfight as what should be the younger, fresher, better fighter concerns me. I do like how he choked out Brad Riddell in the first round. Brad Riddell, another story of a guy with a lot of promise, a lot of hype, a lot of potential, didn't live up to it. Unfortunately, might even be retired from the sport with how bad his career has kind of taken a toll in the negative way. But it's tough. It's tough. Moicano versus Dober is one of the hardest fights I feel on a card just full of hard to predict fights. But I'm also thinking about Chan Sung Jung, the Korean zombie, viciously KO'd in 2019, Renato Moicano in the first round. And I get 2019 was a while ago. People can change. They can get better. They can adapt. But MMA is a brutal sport. It's a brutal sport. In 2019, yeah, it's been a few years, but it's not that long ago. And the Korean zombie should not have taken such a drastic nosedive in his career like he did since 2019 with that finish. So it's kind of got me a little concerned once again for all the good Moicano does that he was able to get taken out that quick, that fast by a guy who I thought was back, I thought was in his prime, and then just took a nosedive in Korean zombie. So with the way the odds are on this fight, it just adds to how difficult it is because you got Moicano at a minus 185, Dober at a plus 154, Moicano by KO TKO is a plus 700, by decision for Moicano is a plus 4. If you go Dober by KO TKO, it's plus 225. If you go Dober by sub, plus 2,200. And if you go by Dober decision, plus 900. I don't think it's going to be sub. I think both guys are going to stand and bang. If it does get into the grappling department, I think Moicano kind of has a pretty decided edge there with his Brazilian jiu-jitsu advantage. And he does have, at least a few finishes from like rear naked choke on his resume in the UFC, which really helps. Like he finished Damir Hadzovic by rear naked choke so first that he actually got pissed off. And then he confronted Damir about it, and Damir just said, well, you shouldn't have finished me that fast if you wanted to fight. It was kind of hilarious, the interaction. So Moicano definitely has the BJJ grappling edge. I just don't think it's going to come to that. It's going to be a war, so it's either going to be decision or KO TKO. Dober can be finished, but he does have a good chin. It does seem like it is hard to finish him, as Terrence McKinney found out. He can easily, just when you think you've got him up against the cage, about to be done, the fight's called, he turns it around and it's like, call an ambulance, but not for me. It's tough. It's a very tough fight, but what it comes down to for me is Moicano, I feel like, is the better fighter on paper, does have the better record, and has the most potential to – we haven't seen everything with him yet. Going back to what I started off this conversation with, I feel like we've seen what Drew Dober has to offer. And unfortunately, with as long as he's been in, as many fights as he's had in his career and in the UFC, I think this is where he's at. This is his career. This is what it is. So I like Moicano. It's going to be 15 minutes. It's going to be 3 rounds. Since they've both been in some wars, I'm going to try not to get too giddy with the finishes because it hasn't worked out for me lately when I've done that. I'm going to take decision because both guys are hard to finish. No pun intended, even though we had a guy do softcore earlier. Let's go plus 400 Moicano by decision. What are you thinking, Ben?
You were saying about how he probably leads in a bunch of stats. Well, everybody that's seen the screen knows he's leading in all stats versus Dober. Renato Moicano, he's an impressive dude. Good jab kick combo. He's not just reliant solely on his fists. Wants to stay standing. He will do the takedown, and he will use his BJJ. But like you were saying, I think they're going to stand and bang too. Not as much as McCann and Belbita. This was almost my knuck if you buck fight. But I just think that both guys have might take some more shots and takedowns in this fight. trying to get away from getting punched in the face for a little bit. Once somebody's on the ground, he just goes straight for that rear naked choke. Like, that is all Moicano looks for. He's good at it. And he's had a long layoff is what concerns me. His last fight was November of 2022. So you were saying he's got fresh legs. He's got very fresh legs. Drew Dober, quick hands, very quick hands. He could take abuse in that TKO when he got finished. It's definitely, you can argue if it was an early stoppage or not, because he hopped up and he looked fine. He wasn't wobbling a ton, I thought. But at the same time, if they don't call it, does he still get finished? Probably. You know, I mean, he was just taking so much punishment. He was already bleeding heavy. But he's got serious KO power himself. Went to the third with Makhachev, which I was pretty impressed with. Drew Dober, also most KOs in lightweight history.
Yeah, dude's been around a while.
He has. Renato's just got so much stuff going on too. Like, shout out Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce, right? Just you have more distractions. Renato, he's got his podcast. He does a lot of stuff. I don't know. He's definitely the more famous guy right now. I think Renato is. And Drew Dober, he used to be super famous because, yes, he was the Giga Chad guy. He just shaved his beard. I'm going to take
Drew. Got a hell of a jawline.
A hell of a jawline, dude. I'm going to take Drew Dober by decision at plus 900.
I don't hate it. This is a tough fight, man.
Very tough.
Another waffler, so I don't hate it at all. I don't blame you. It's tough, but once again, you know, one guy's gonna win, one guy's gonna lose. It's not to be a philosophical like Nate Diaz. I know it's a common sense thing to say, but you know, yeah, it's tough, man.
Yeah,
very tough.
Absolutely, it is, man. We're gonna go on to the main fight of the night. We've got Roman Dolidze versus Nassourdine Imavov. Oh, I think the last one was really hard. This one might be the hardest one for me. Because it's just, I can see the path of victory for both guys. Dolidze coming off a loss to number 4 Vettori. He's got high knockout potential. He just out-muscles guys, but he's slow, man. He is very slow. Good grapple strike combo. Decent gas tank. Like, for a guy, when you're looking at these big, hairy dudes, you don't think that they're going to last very long. Dolidze, he's got a decent tank. Doesn't kick much, though. He will kick, but he's just another hand-heavy, takedown-heavy guy. We're looking at Imavov. I got demon dog elbows. Man, fetch me their souls. Fetch me their souls. Right? Just,
right.
Just coming at you. It doesn't matter where you are. He will just end you with those things. Puts his hands down, though, when he's standing, which makes me nervous for getting knocked out. Natural body positioning, though. I mean, this guy, it doesn't matter where he is on the mat. He's just always in the right position, I feel. He wants the smoke, dude. He wants to hang and bang. He wants to wrestle. He's one of those guys that he's not going to just go in there and just sit on the edge of the cage and just do nothing the entire time. He's got great movement, and he was still going hard in round 5 against Sean Strickland and the last fight that I saw him with. I'm going to go Imavov by decision, but I could see Dolidze with a knockout here too. Both of them are they're really good fighters. Imavov, quite a bit younger too. This one I had a really hard time with. And Imavov too, I think his last 2 fights were a loss with Sean Strickland and then a no contest with our boy Chris Curtis with Clashing Heads. So
yes, it was.
Imavov, I think he gets back in the win column here. I don't think it's going to go loss, no contest, loss. Dolidze is coming off a loss too. 12-2 versus 12-4-1. I think Imavov gets right here. What do you think?
I mean, I have to unfortunately disagree on this one as well because I think Roman Mr. Steal Your Girl Dolidze is 100% probably going to win. I shouldn't say 100%. That's a bit too bold of me to proclaim because this is another man, how's this fight going to end situation for me,
Right.
like damn near every other fight on this card. Pretty competitive after we started doing the research, looking into it more so than I thought on paper. But I mean, man, if I got like flip a coin between these two to decide it, I gotta go with the guy who stole another fighter's girlfriend, which is kind of sad actually. The story with Cheyenne Vilmus or whatever her name is, and how she was running around on her other fighter boyfriend with every other fighter on the roster. But I mean, Roman, steal your girl Dolidze. He has, like you were mentioning, the grappling, good wrestling. I noticed he has like a lot of finishes from knees, like 2 knee finishes, a finish from the clinch, good clinch work, which is, can be grappling because you can use that since it is a clinch. You can use that to set up your takedowns, or you can use it like he has been to set up your strikes and to, get like hooks or, like a hand on the back of the head, and then the other hand like a kind of like almost like a tie plume, and then like you break off with like an elbow or something, kind of like a Leon Edwards. So you got a lot of options when you're strong in the clinch like that to either keep going with your striking or to use it to get like your singles, your doubles, whatever, trips, etc. So it's really good when you have a guy like Dolidze that kind of has that mastery of the clinch. It's just the problem is getting within distance safely to execute that, like you were mentioning. That's always the tricky, challenging thing about trying to get that grappling to work in MMA and to get into those clinch situations where you have choices is covering that distance and how you cover it without leaving yourself vulnerable to strikes and getting intercepted by knees or whatever on your takedowns, like Ben Askren and other, individuals have unfortunately fallen victim to. So all that being said, I just kind of think Roman Dolidze has the edge. He has the advantage in that grappling, in that striking, in that, ability to take control of the clinch and to be able to work whatever his game plan is against Nassourdine Imavov. No shame in losing to Marvin Vettori. I really like Marvin Vettori. He's one of my guys I root for in the division. I'm a pretty fan of the crazy Italian orc. Trevin Giles, excuse me, that's a bit of a head scratcher. But other than that, no other blemishes. Those are his only 2 blemishes in his young career. And like I said, no shame in Marvin Vettori. The only one that concerns me is Trevin Giles. But Kyle Dawkins, I thought Kyle Dawkins was pretty decent for his run. He finished him in the first round. Phil Hawes, we've talked enough about Phil Hawes on this show. I'm not really impressed he finished him in the first round. But once again, good litmus test.
Yeah.
It is a good litmus test because if you can't finish Phil Hawes, then you have a problem. So round 1 finish. What does impress me is he finished Jack Hermanson, and he did it from punches from back control in round 2. Jack Hermanson is not a good striker, but he is a really good grappler, and he is really good at subs. And for him to be finished from punches from back control, it's not something that you see too often when you're supposed to be a good grappler to kind of get yourself in a position like that to get finished by strikes from a back take. So it's impressive that Dolidze was able to accomplish that against Jack Hermanson. So things like that are what lead me to give the edge to Roman Dolidze, because everything else in terms of the age, I mean, yeah, 27, Nassourdine Imavov, Dolidze's 35, but, neither guy has a lot of miles. 35 is not a senior citizen, despite what society may tell you. Neither one's taken a lot of damage. Neither one's been in a lot of wars. Neither one has like a crazy amount of fights like somebody like Drew Dober with all the wear and tear. 6'3", Imavov, Dolidze 6'2", so that's not a huge discrepancy. Reach is like 1 inch. So when all things are considered like this, like you're already seeing on your screen, I'm not gonna, nauseate you with stuff you're already seeing on your screen flashing. I just like Dolidze for, those kind of intangible things that you can't really quantify, like strike count, takedown totals, things of that nature, especially when you have them as a plus 142 to Imavov's minus 170. I like it even if you want to once again play it safe with the money line. Plus 142 on Dolidze is a good value. I don't think it's going to go the distance. So I'm thinking since the majority of his finishes have come from him using the clinch and those positions to set up striking as opposed to his grappling. I'm kind of liking it by KO TKO because even if he does get himself in a situation like he did Hermanson, where he's winning the grappling exchanges and he's in dominant positions like back mount and, backpacking and things of that nature, he still, thus far, at least in the UFC, has looked for more of strike finishes as opposed to sub finishes. So that's why I like the odds of him on KO TKO at plus 350. But I wouldn't laugh if you wanted a sub from Dolidze because that's plus 550. I just don't think it's going to go to decision. Dolidze, let me check again, but I don't even know that he's went to decision once. Oh, excuse me. 3 times in the UFC, but still, he's not one of those guys where his power hasn't translated. It has translated, and that's always a good sign when you can still get finishes in the UFC like you were doing on regional scene. So yeah, Dolidze KO TKO is what I'm going to put my money on.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. We're betting here speed versus power, and we're just on opposite sides of the coin there. If it goes a distance, I think it goes Imavov. Just I think that Dolidze wasn't able to get his hands on him. But if this ends in a KO, I think it's Dolidze.
Yeah, it's tough. You're not off base by any means. And, every fight on this card has been, once again, this was a card that on paper I was kind of pooping on like everybody else, saying it was bad. But once you start doing your research, it's kind of like, wow, this is kind of one of those rare instances of pretty decent matchmaking. It feels like no fight is kind of a blowout, like Bo Nickel. I'm going to stop picking on him and pick somebody else like Greg Hardy. Greg Hardy's fights, come on. They would literally bring in guys who had been cut back for a one-fight deal just to feed to Greg Hardy, who still couldn't even beat him half the time or struggled or used an inhaler. So compared to what we could be getting from the UFC, I'm not going to take the black pill, but I'm also not going to be one of those idiots who's like, oh, this is a sneaky good card, even though it has 6 women's fights and only one good fight or whatever. I'm not one of those weirdos either. It's a decent card.
Yeah.
Jack Slack said it best. His hype for it is fair to middling. So, but it does have at least some competitive fights that when you dive deep into it like we have, and you actually go over everything that you can, intangibles and tangibles, you're like, wow, this is kind of a little bit more competitive than I thought.
Yeah, absolutely, man. So if you're going to go for a haymaker this week, what are you thinking?
That's another tough one because as we went along through this podcast, once again, that's changed compared to what I thought it was going to be. But now that I've went over all the fights that we've went over and looked at all those odds in depth, as long as we have, I'm really liking Dolidze. I think that's going to be my LL Cool J bet. And that could really come back to bite me because of how close that fight is. But, I was thinking about putting it on Moicano Dober. Still have the same problem, close. Mm-hmm. And then the only other contender for my LL Cool J Haymaker was going to be Muslim Salikhov Randy Brown, the battle of mediocrity, battle of unmet expectations. So I just feel like the best bet is going to be Dolidze at the plus 350 for KO TKO. The guy, he's not necessarily allergic to going to decision. Once again, he's went like 3 times in the UFC, but his power does translate. He does hunt for it. He does look for it, and he will put himself in situations to get it. So, yeah, that's going to be my LL Cool J. My Haymaker, really liking the odds on that bet.
Awesome, man. Awesome. Hey, I just got an article out on bettergreen.com about the Sean Strickland Dreykus fight. If you haven't checked it out yet, please go over there, check it out. We got some graphs, some really deep dive information on there that you can't find anywhere else. So go check that out if you're interested and you like MMA content. Bobby will have an article out there as well. Make sure you guys subscribe, follow us on all socials. And before we get out of here, Bobby, do you have anything else to close out?
Nope, just follow us on Twitter, Better and Green. Like and subscribe on YouTube. As Ben mentioned, the article is top notch. I read it.
Thanks,
And
man.
yeah, all these other bums, man, they're not going to go through this effort. Like, this man did all this research himself. He sat down, he compiled the statistics. This wasn't stuff that he just pulled from the UFC website. I mean, yeah, that helped him with his research, but he still had to do the legwork on this. And it's like, this is just what we do for you guys. And we do this free of charge. We're not even asking you, hey, if you want to subscribe and get even more content and even more things that can help you win money, yeah, it's like $1 a month. Isn't that what it is
Yep.
for like premium content?
$1,
other than
$5,
that-
and $10. Yep, that's it.
Right. So like, we're giving you all this damn near for free. Most of it is free. Like, this show is free. The article about Dreykus, Sean Strickland, is free.
Yep.
It's all this content that we're putting all this effort into because we care about you. We care about your bets. We care about making you money, making ourselves money, and having a good time while we're doing it. Can you say the same for the other content creators you watch? Do you believe them? That's all I'm going to say.
I love it, Bobby. Eloquent as always, man. Thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you guys in the next episode. Peace, guys.
Peace.
You better start listening to the Better in Green podcast. You will not regret it. Trust me, trust me, trust me. And hey, I'm Dean Blandino.
Welcome, welcome, welcome to Better in Green, eh? To Better in Green, eh? To Better in Green, eh? Listening and cash out, that's what it's all about. Come on, let's make cash now. We always on spot and we cover all spots from the bottom to the top, hey. Shout out to Ethan, shout out to Wyatt, shout out to Ben. Welcome, welcome to our podcast, Better in Green.